The rain was heavy today, and it felt like a hail of stones against young Elias's head. The chill winds blew harder than usual from over the moaning sea, and most everything about the day seemed to be coated with a fine layer of gloom. Why was the day so unpleasant, and yet so many played and laughed as if benevolent Rosia shone down upon them? Annie, the tailor, played with her daughter, Elizabeth. The baker, Heinrich, stood at his stand, wearing a great smile on his mustached face, as if entirely unaware of the freezing rain rendering his goods soggy, and, equally unaware, the butcher, Hiley, stood eating the soggy bread and speaking as though it were fresh. Something was wrong, but Elias had no idea what.
"Eli!"
called a gruff yet endearing voice.
"What's wrong with you? You look as though ghosts are coming after you."
I don't know, Da. Don't you feel the cold rain? Elias was hoping for anything. His father paused for a moment, looking about, before seemingly facing a stark realization.
Aye, it is raining, ain't it?
Why is your Heinrich selling his bread in the rain, Da? Ain't it getting soggy? And why is Hiley eating the bread? Ain't she gonna fall ill?
Eh? Hiley responded, hearing her name mentioned. She always did have good ears.
Ain't soggy. It's just moist.
She laughed heartily. Elias shook his head. He didn't find this funny. Just weird. And a little bit scary. As the butcher laughed, Elias's eyes fell on dark, monolithic shadows silhouetted against the thick ocean fog. They appeared to be growing, and doing so rather fast. Elias pointed to the shapes, his father following his finger.
What is it? What's you pointing at, Elias?
His father was straining his eyes, attempting to focus best he could. Elias felt as though he was putting extra effort into pointing, as he verbally clarified.
The black shapes, Dad. Don't you see 'em? There's something out there, there is.
As the words escaped Elias's mouth, his father's eyes widened in terror.
I see him.
As the black shapes grew in size, their structure became more clear. They were boats, it seemed, if an abominable mockery of the standard boat. Each seemed to have what looked like flesh stretched across it, and an ample amount of bones adorning its hull. Elias felt a tug, followed by his father's voice, which was now panicked.
"Let's go, Elias. Let's get the wagon and go."
He couldn't move. He was entranced by the oncoming monoliths of terror. As he stared, he could hear a faint screaming that was building in his ears. The screaming was only broken by his father, this time shouting,
"Let's get your ma and go, Elias!"
The volume of Elias's father seemed to break some unspoken peace, as at this point all of the townsfolk were looking at him as if he were a madman. Annie was the first to voice her concerns.
What's the problem, Jorik? Can't the boy have a little fun outside? 'Tis a beautiful day, after all.
Jorik was now nigh hysterical.
"Can't you see him? Can't you see the boats?"
Annie turned to look out to the unfriendly sea.
What boats?
At this point, Jorik released Elias's arm and ran to ready the wagon. The boats were nearly to the shore now. They were massive, Elias was saying now. To him, they seemed to nearly be the size of the city of Souther Hall each. He was so entranced by the enveloping darkness of the oncoming monsters that he hardly noticed that his father had already gathered his mother and readied the wagon.
"Elias! It's time to go! Now!"
Heinrich laughed.
"And he's right. You're being hysterical, Jorik. Come on over. Have some..."
The rest of his sentence was cut off by the sound of a loud crash. One of the boats had hit the shoreline, and a massive door, as if the maw of a voracious beast, yawned open, obliterating Gareth the fisherman's seaside hut. Despite the cacophony of noise, Heinrich's mouth moved, as if uninterrupted. The fear kicked in. Elias could now move. He turned and ran to the wagon as swiftly as he could, leaping into the back. He looked back upon the town and saw tall and lithe figures emerging from the monsters of metal, flesh and bone, descending upon the entranced villagers like ravenous predators. They threw sacks of strange material over their heads and dragged them away. Now the screaming began. The real screaming. As they rode away as quickly as they could, one of these predatory creatures turned, looking directly at Elias. Its eyes were as black as midnight, the only sign of its gaze an evil white circle amongst a sea of black. As its white pupil gazed into Elias's very being, its facial features hidden behind a mask of dark metal, it raised a single, jagged finger to Elias, promising a silent reckoning.